This program is brought to you by Link TV for educational and non-commercial use only. Mosaic, a daily news program from Link TV, presents a selection of news reports from independent and state-controlled broadcasters from throughout the Middle East.
إلى الملف الفلسطيني فقد أعرب مبعوث الأمين العام للأمم المتحدة
Michael Williams, the new United Nations envoy to the Middle East, said that he was concerned about the Israeli decision to arrest the Palestinian Prime Minister and members of the Legislative Council. Israel launched a large-scale arrest campaign in the West Bank, during which 33 political figures from Hamas were detained. Palestinian Education Minister Nasr al-Din al-Shara was also arrested in his home in Nablus City in northern West Bank.
Israel launched another large-scale arrest campaign, similar to the one it carried out after the kidnapping of the Israeli soldier Gilad Shalit last summer. This time, Israel surrounded the homes of 33 political figures and activists from the Hamas movement and arrested them. Among those who were arrested was the Palestinian Minister of Education, Nasr al-Din al-Sha'ir, as well as 3 legislative council members, including Sheikh Hamid al-Bitawi, who was arrested in spite of his old age and health condition.
I told them that I will hold them responsible if anything bad should happen to Sheikh Batawi. They told me to lower my voice and that they already know about his health condition. Sheikh Batawi then entered the room and prepared himself. They told him to prepare his bag and take his medication. I gave him his medication, including the pills that he takes for his heart surgery.
Among those who were arrested were the mayors of Qalqilia, Biara, and Nablus. A demonstration was held in Nablus to protest these arrests. Israeli occupation forces also raided and closed a number of Hamas institutions. In previous days, they closed one of the Legislative Council headquarters in addition to charity and educational institutions. The executive branch of the PLO and the Palestinian government condemned Israel's arrest campaign and accused it of carrying out a plan to dissolve the Palestinian Authority institutions.
This is an attack on the police, the government, and democratic institutions. The objective is to eliminate the Palestinian Authority institutions and cancel outstanding agreements.
Israel said that the arrest campaign is a message to Hamas to stop launching the locally made missiles in Gaza. Several days ago, the Israeli Intercabinet gave the army a green light to escalate its military operations against Hamas, its leaders, and institutions.
Hamas is trying to change the situation in the West Bank, so it will be similar to the situation in Gaza. The Hamas offices that were closed in the West Bank were used to incite operations against Israel.
While the Palestinian president is still trying to reach a cooling-off agreement, Israel's warplanes continue to raid Gaza and its forces continue their arrest campaign in the West Bank. The international silence provides Israel with an ideal opportunity to use military force to resolve its conflict with the Palestinians. Shireen Abu Aqle, Al Jazeera Television, occupied Ramallah.
تزامنا مع إحكام الجيش اللبناني طوقه حول مخيم نهر البارد.
While the Lebanese army surrounds Nahr al-Bared refugee camp, news reports indicate that the army has sunk 2 boats that was being used by armed Fatah al-Islam members who attempted to escape the camp. The Lebanese Prime Minister Fouad Siniora reiterated Lebanese determination to uproot terrorism and the need to distinguish between Palestinians in the camp and the Fatah al-Islam organization. Siniora also welcomed French Foreign Minister Bernard Kouchner, who stressed that France stands with Lebanon during this critical period the country is going through.
دعوني أقول لكم إن الفلسطينيين في لبنان في المخيمات وخارجها.
Allow me to tell you that the Palestinians in Lebanon, inside and outside the camps, are our brothers. Since the Nakba, or catastrophe, we have shared with them life's good and bad days. So no one should try to come between the Lebanese government and its people and the Palestinian people in Lebanon.
Total calm has returned to the Nahr refugee camp after confrontations ended, giving way for a political resolution to emerge from different concerned parties in the crisis. On the ground, the Lebanese army reinforced its positions at the southern entrance using dozens of equipment. Checkpoints were used to accurately identify those fleeing to safer areas. Notably, the army succeeded in foiling an attempted escape by some members of Fatah al-Islam, who used 2 inflatable boats. On the humanitarian side, the Badawi refugee camp witnessed difficult living conditions as thousands of Palestinians fled there, unable to return.
Had we stayed during the shelling, it would have been better than these miserable living conditions. There are 1 million people in one room, and the small amount of water we get, we give to the children.
There are elderly people who are suffering. There are no necessities of life here. On the humanitarian side, like beds, food, or water.
Amidst the humanitarian ceasefire, political communications were being made on many fronts. The possibility that the proposed solutions will succeed is very slim. With the continued humanitarian ceasefire, the residents of the camp are still waiting for a solution to this problem. Meanwhile, everyone agrees on the need to close the file on Fatah al-Islam.
Terrorism reaches Al this time with 16 people wounded in a bomb blast yesterday night. The third in the country in 1 week. The blast rocked a particularly popular summer resort for Arab tourists, which is the stronghold of MP Walid Jumblat. Fawaz has the story.
At least 16 people were wounded when a bomb exploded in the mountain resort of Al, the third such bombing in the country in a week. The blast rocked the predominantly Druze town, which is popular as a summer resort for Arab tourists and is the stronghold of Druze leader MP Walid Jumblat. 2 of the 16 wounded, a Syrian and a Lebanese, were in serious condition. The explosive charge was placed in a small suitcase near the entrance of a residential building. The blast damaged several buildings and shops along the street, which was immediately cordoned off by police. Relief workers and police climbed over rubble where a wall was blown down by the explosion to search for people who may have been trapped. Wednesday night's explosion was the third blast to hit Beirut and its environs since fighting broke out on Sunday between Lebanese troops and militants of the Fatah al-Islam. Jumblat pointed the finger at Syria, which he said was trying to block a UN resolution to set up an international tribunal to try suspects in the killing of former Premier Rafiq Hariri, which was widely blamed on Damascus. In an interview with CNN, Jumblat said, quote, "This is why the Syrian regime is trying to terrorize us and say, if you don't adopt the resolution, this is an example of what will happen in Lebanon." Telecommunications Minister Marwan Ahmedi was also quick to accuse Damascus. He told Al-Arabiya television station, the Al blast is another attempt to sow discord, to terrorize the Lebanese in order to ruin the coming tourism season.
Away from Nahr al-Barid is Lebanon's biggest Palestinian refugee camp at Ain al-Helwa in the south of the country. The camp is one of the most densely populated places on earth, and while it has been peaceful in recent days, many residents fear the violence seen in Tripoli could spread. Al Jazeera's Alan Fisher has been to Ain al-Helwa and sent this report.
This is home for the people that have no home. Ain al-Helwa is the biggest Palestinian refugee camp in Lebanon. Here, 80,000 people exist in just 1 square kilometre, making it one of the most populous places on earth. Events in and around Tripoli are being followed very closely here, 100 kilometres to the south. The people here know that if things there escalate dramatically, then it will be very difficult to keep the lid on violence here and in other camps like it across the country. Sometimes this too can be a dangerous place. Munir Mukhta is the head of Fatah's armed wing in Lebanon. As we walked the streets of the camp, he gave me his assessment of all that's been happening in the north.
We have announced a state of emergency, which includes all of the Palestinian factions and all the Islamic groups, and our decision is to ensure the fighting will not spread to the other camps. We are taking all necessary steps.
This camp has been untouched by the violence of the last few days, but there's still worry and concern. Fewer people are on the street. Schools have remained padlocked shut. In a building off one of the main streets, Ahmad is taking care of her grandchildren. She has 30 of them. She has close relatives in the camp in Tripoli, and she's waiting for news to find out if they're safe.
It is very, very painful for us because they are our people, our brothers, and the situation is affecting everyone. Most of our family lives there, and anyway, we are all brothers. And we hope the situation will calm down in the best possible manner because the Palestinian refugees don't need these problems.
On the streets, there's support for the Lebanese army and concern about what this all means for the future.
These groups will affect us and our cause, the right of return for Palestinian refugees, and that is much more important, much bigger than any of these groups.
This is just an introduction. I fear lots of bad things are coming up for the Palestinian people.
The Palestinians here are worried about the innocent civilians being killed, about the prospect of the violence spreading. They want the trouble to end soon, but it may not. And that's their biggest worry. Alan Fisher, Al Jazeera, Ain Helwa Camp, southern Lebanon.
Violence in Iraq neither discriminates in choosing its victims nor respects the sanctity of life. A booby-trapped car exploded during a funeral procession in Al-Fallujah, resulting in a massacre that immediately took the lives of more than 30 civilians and injured dozens. As for Kirkuk, explosives by unidentified armed men turned a major oil well west of the city into a sea of flames, which according to the experts will take several weeks to control. As for the U.S. forces, they continue to incur more losses in Iraq, announcing this morning the death of 2 of their soldiers in the Anbar district. Earlier, the U.S. Army confirmed that the body found by the Iraqi police yesterday in the Euphrates belonged to Joseph Anzac, one of the 3 soldiers who were kidnapped 12 days ago. With this, the number of U.S. casualties rises to 88 this month. Fear is the favorite policy of the U.S. president to justify his country's position in Iraq, which he backs up further with evidence. In his commencement address to the U.S. Coast Guard Academy, Bush cited intelligence information confirming that Osama bin Laden, the head of Al-Qaeda, aims at turning Iraq into a base from which to launch attacks on the U.S.
We're determined to stop the world's most
dangerous men from striking America with the world's most dangerous weapons. Al-Qaeda knows that a democratic Iraq is a threat to their ambitions to impose their hateful ideology across the Middle East. And Al-Qaeda knows that our presence in Iraq is a direct threat to their existence in Iraq. Our security depends on helping the Iraqis succeed in defeating Al-Qaeda in Iraq.
In the same severe tone, Washington threatened to impose new penalties on Tehran because of what it described as persistence in challenging the national community, after a new report by the International Atomic Energy Agency about Tehran's nuclear activity. However, the Iranian response was filled with more challenges, as the president, Mahmoud Ahmadinejad, promised that his country will continue its nuclear program and will not suspend it, even for an instant. Iraqi citizens in Bahrouz district in Diyala province managed to eradicate terrorist groups with the support of security agencies.
Bahrouz's residents called on concerned parties to return public services to the district.
Bahrouz district is located in Baqouba city in Diyala province. It was one of the hot spots, but its residents eliminated the so-called Al-Qaeda terrorist groups with the support of the army. However, Bahrouz's residents still suffer from lack of services in their area.
We need public services, natural gas and oil. We also need sanitation services. This is very important for us.
Now we have better security than before, but we need flour. We received a food shipment and oil. We don't have many things. We don't have sufficient water. Public services are very poor in Bahrouz.
One of Bahrouz's residents said that schools were closed due to terrorist operations that used to take place all over the area. He urged concerned parties to launch a campaign to return public services to the district.
The security situation did not allow students to go to school. Some of the teachers left. We asked the concerned parties to pay attention to the situation of Bahrouz students. There is no regular school attendance in Bahrouz, Khatun, and Al-Mafraq. We hope that they find a solution.
He also urged Bahrouz's residents to hire unemployed workers in their areas. In addition, one religious leader in Bahrouz called on Iraqis to be brothers and to unify and avoid violence.
God willing, residents from all areas will volunteer in the army. So no one will have an excuse to say that the army is formed of militias or from Al-Qaeda. God willing, the hated occupation will end.
It is clear that Bahrouz district is now one of the safe areas. Bahrouz's residents reiterated that their district can be transformed into a modern and prosperous one if the civilian administration in Diyala province does its job. Although security has returned to Bahrouz district in the Diyala province, residents of the district urged the government to return public services to their area. From Bahrouz district in Diyala province, Samir El-Shamari, Al-Iraqiya television. Ali Dabafi, a spokesman for the Iraqi government in Baghdad, said that the trilateral talks between Iran, Iraq and the United States on May 28th will address ways to support the Iraqi government in resolving the growing security problem. William Goldwell, a spokesman for the United States occupation, welcomed these talks to resolve the problems of Iraq.
May 28th is a day of anticipation, not only for the Americans and Iranians, but also for Iraqis. On this day, the US, Iran and Iraq will meet exclusively to discuss the Iraqi security file and to find ways on how to improve the security situation there.
The U.S. ambassador and the Iranian ambassador will meet here in Baghdad. The topic will focus on one file, the Iraqi file. There will be no discussions about any other stalled issues between the two countries. We believe that it is better for the two sides, Iran and the U.S., to have relations in order to improve our general situation in the region. Success is linked to their mutual desire to succeed. We feel that there is a desire by both sides to have a dialogue, and this is good. It's nice to have good intentions, but I think that there also needs to be a political will for the success of these discussions, for the sake of developing the region and getting it out of this crisis.
Observers welcome the dialogue about Iraq between Iraq, the US and Iran. Meanwhile, the US side welcomed the anticipated dialogue as long as it leads to an effective resolution to the Iraqi crisis.
Finding a resolution to the problems in Iraq through negotiations is welcomed. We are exerting efforts to find a quick resolution to the problems in Iraq. We are looking forward to this meeting.
The upcoming talks may be the best solution to the Iraqi problem if everyone agrees to contain the cycle of violence which is killing Iraqis every day. This can be achieved if these talks are fruitful and not just ink on paper. Ali Hamza, Al-Alam TV, Baghdad.
The head of the United Nations nuclear watchdog expressed concern today about Iran's growing nuclear capacity and his organization's inability to monitor the program. International Atomic Energy Chief Mohammed al-Baradei claims Tehran is still several years away from obtaining nuclear capability, but he believes a major confrontation will occur if the hardline Islamic Republic continues to stymie the efforts of the IAEA.
I tend, based on our analysis, to agree with people like John Negroponte and the new director of CIA who are saying that Iran, even if they want to go for the nuclear weapon, they are still not, it will not be before the end of this decade or sometime in the middle of the next decade. In other words, 3 to 8 years from now.
And staying with that subject, you'll see the connection in a minute. The prestigious Guardian of Zion Award, conferred annually by the Bar-Ilan University Renat Center, will be bestowed this evening on distinguished author Norman Podhoretz, who is about to publish a new book titled World War IV. It will be published on 9/11. A founding editor of Commentary magazine, Podhoretz wrote this month's lead story titled The Case for Bombing Iran. Mr. Podhoretz joins us now in the studio. Thank you so much for being our guest this evening.
Thank you for having me.
Mr. Podhoretz, in your article, you say there in fact is no other solution for the Iranian nuclear threat other than an American military strike. Yes. Have you told President Bush what you think?
Yes, I have.
And what does he say?
He was very non-committal, but he didn't say no.
Do you think he'll do it?
Yes, I do. I believe, contrary to what many people assume, that he will do it before he leaves office, possibly shortly before he leaves office. I think he agrees with the analysis that I offer, namely that there is no alternative to military action. Nothing else will stop them, not negotiations, not sanctions. There won't be an internal insurrection, at least in time. And I myself am skeptical of the estimates of the CIA and the IAEA, 3 to 5 years. I mean, the CIA's estimates on such matters have been wrong so often that they have very little credibility. And I think we have to assume the worst, namely that they're closer than these estimates suggest. And I believe that President Bush will not leave office with Iran in possession of a nuclear weapon.
You would like to see the United States take that action, but should Israel become involved and cooperate with the American military forces?
Well, tell you the truth, I don't know which would be the more desirable course. I think that it would be very difficult for Israel to pull off such an operation under present circumstances and given the complications within Iran. I think the United States can do it, launching strikes from the 2 carriers that are sitting nearby. There are submarines with cruise missiles. I think we're capable of doing it effectively, and I think it would probably, all things considered, be better if the United States did it than if Israel were involved.
The views expressed on Mosaic are those of the participating broadcasters, not Link TV or its sponsors. Please visit linktv.org/Mosaic for more information about these broadcasters or to view previous Mosaic programs, obtain program transcripts, or receive the weekly Mosaic Intelligence Report. Mosaic is made possible by a grant from the William and Flora Hewlett Foundation. Additional support is provided by the Firedoll Foundation, the Otto Haas Charitable Trust, and by committed Link TV viewers like you. If you value this program, please send your tax-deductible contribution to Link TV, either through the website or the mailing address listed on your screen. This program was brought to you by Link TV. for educational and non-commercial use only.